Did Jesus journey to India to learn the secrets of the Eastern gurus? There is no shortage of sources claiming to have definitive proof of Jesus' so-called lost years. And depending on the source, Jesus either spent 17 years in India before his ministry in Palestine, or he spent the remainder of his life in India, where he lived up until the age of 120, after somehow surviving the cross. Now, I've been meditating on the person of Jesus, on his deity, on the implications that follow Christianity being true, and it seems that everyone wants to lay claim to Jesus. Islam wants him as a prophet of Allah. The New Age wants him as an enlightened master. Some atheists want him as a great moral teacher, others as mere myth. Interesting. We just can't seem to dismiss Jesus when we're confronted with him. He has to be explained somehow. We'll either take the historical Jesus or, for whatever reason, assign him some new identity, a role perhaps less impactful, so that we can carry on doing whatever it is that we want to do, regardless of what's actually true. Just a thought. Let's explore some of these Jesus went to India stories. One of the marvels of history has been the rise, every now and then, of a man claiming to be Christ returned. These men have often been thoroughly evil, speaking and behaving and treating others in an entirely antithetical manner to that of Jesus. One example is Jim Jones, the leader of the People's Temple, who led nearly 1,000 followers of his into a mass suicide pact. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was an Indian religious leader and another example of a false messiah. Ahmad was the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. He taught two things about Jesus, and these two teachings became fundamental to the Ahmadiyya doctrine. He taught that the second coming of the Son of Mary was a spiritual dissension and had been fulfilled in him. He also taught that Jesus did not ascend to heaven, but that he survived the cross, and that he went away to Kashmir in India, where he died at the age of 120. An ancient tomb of one Yuz Asaf in the city conveniently became Jesus's tomb, and is so regarded by the Ahmadiyya to this day. This sect of Islam base their beliefs on Quran 23 verse 50. And we made the son of Maryam and his mother as a sign, and we gave them refuge on high ground, a place of rest, security, and flowing streams. For no apparent reason, they seem to think that this refuge was Kashmir in India. Now, to be clear, though the Ahmadiyya movement has made some progress, it is still a relatively minor sect of Islam, one which Orthodox Islam rejects. Ahmad's supreme claim is that he was the promised Messiah. He even went so far as to claim that he was like Jesus, and that his character was in every way a model replica of the Son of Mary, of his holy personality. And as if that wasn't arrogant enough, he claimed that revelation identified him with Jesus, one of his proofs being his likeness in character to Jesus, but afterwards he claimed to be superior to him. And this claim was repeated by his son, who said that it was not beyond the power of God to raise one in our time similar to Jesus or greater than him from among Muslims. Another Ahmadiyya writer bluntly declared, "Forget then the memory of Mary's son. Ghulam Ahmad is better than he." So this guy popped up around 1880. He wrote a number of works attacking Christianity and Hinduism, defending Islam from the onslaught of Christian missionaries and the Arya Samaj, a militant Hindu organization. So at first he was favored by Muslims. It appeared that a mujahideen had arisen, a worthy defender of Islam. These sentiments, however, soon gave way to almost universal opposition, as his claims became increasingly blasphemous. So let's see. On the one hand, we have thousands of early authoritative manuscripts informing us of the person and the life of Jesus. And on the other hand, you have this wackadoodle narcissist who from around 1880 was arrogating to himself the title Messiah, nay, the promised Messiah, a man who was claiming to be the Mahdi and a prophet of Allah, and even a reincarnation of Krishna. Next, do you know the distance between Jerusalem and India? Well, I googled it. Nearly 3,000 miles apart. Now you can imagine that with the roads and the routes that we might have today, could potentially make it a relatively shorter trip than it would have been in Jesus' time. So what about food? What about water? What about bandits? Do you really think that it's plausible for a 12-year-old boy to pack up and leave home and walk to India? Let's just ask a few basic questions. What makes you think this actually happened? Why would teenage Jesus decide to pack up, leave everything behind, and go to India? And how can we know that he made this trip? You mean to tell me that a God-fearing, Torah-loving little Jewish boy left his home, walked to India, made it, then travelled around learning from the Eastern gurus to come back 17 years later and preach what in Palestine? Hinduism? Buddhism? He was teaching the Torah. These sorts of claims are presented to us in a film like The Lost Years of Jesus, or Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb, Janet Bock's The Jesus Mystery, and others. In 1894, Nicholas Notovich, a Russian journalist, claimed he had found documents in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, documents describing Jesus' life. In these scrolls, Jesus was known as St Issa. Story time. At the age of 12, Jesus left his home in Jerusalem. He headed for India to study the Vedas, and he was welcomed by the outcasts for his wisdom and miracles. But the Brahmin priests grew jealous, and they sent St Issa on his way. He then journeyed to Kashmir and Tibet. In Tibet, he apparently mastered the Buddhist scriptures. Then he returned to Palestine to preach. Do these scrolls actually exist? Janet Bock concedes, of course, the truth about the missing years in Jesus' life cannot be historically proven and therefore will always be subjective for each individual who explores it, which is the way it should be. We have no need to prove anything about this story. Can you imagine if Christians said that? I don't need to prove anything to you. You're just not enlightened enough to understand. Can you imagine if we said that? Who would take us seriously? I wouldn't. We have no need to prove anything about this story. What? Since it's only honest to admit that there is no historical evidence to back up these claims about Jesus traveling to India, it seems pretty presumptuous of anyone to attribute to Jesus things he neither said nor did. Surely what Jesus actually said and did is more significant than this fictitious Jesus. And just to poke a hole, according to Notovich, Jesus mastered Buddhism while living in Tibet. The big problem with this is that Buddhism didn't reach Tibet until the 7th century AD. Furthermore, what this St Issa is noted to have taught bears no resemblance to Buddhist teachings. In 1895, a Professor J.A. Douglas retraced Notovich's steps to Tibet. He interviewed the head abbot at the monastery where Notovich claimed these scriptures, these scrolls, were found. Douglas obtained a written declaration from the abbot denouncing Notovich's claims. The story was a lie. There were no scrolls of a Saint Issa and no documents about Jesus. This legend is generally ignored by biblical scholars, since there is no biblical support for the idea that Jesus meditated in India before his ministry in Israel. The Orthodox position is that Jesus grew up in Nazareth until it was time to begin his ministry. While the Bible doesn't explicitly say this, it's implied. The primary source of information about the life and the teachings of Jesus is found in the four Gospels. We can apply basic historical tests concerning the authenticity and the accuracy of these documents. So in contrast, there are more than 5,000 Greek manuscripts available for the four Gospels, which can be compared to ascertain if the texts have been faithfully copied and recopied. The interval, then, between the dates of original composition and the earliest extant evidence becomes so small as to be in fact negligible, and the last foundation for any doubt that the scriptures have come down to us substantially as they were written has now been removed. Both the authenticity and the general integrity of the books of the New Testament may be regarded as finally established. Another important fact is that the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses to the events, or written by people who interviewed the eyewitnesses to the events and to the person of Jesus. J.A.T. Robinson, in Redating the New Testament, argued that all of the New Testament books were in circulation before 70 AD. That's within 40 years of the events. The Gospels can also be tested by external evidences. The writings of non-Christians, for example, even enemies to the faith, people who gained absolutely nothing from affirming the events. Josephus, Tacitus, Suetonius, and Pliny the Younger, and from archaeological findings. In all these respects, the Gospels pass the critical tests of historical reliability, like it or not. Jesus quotes the Hebrew scriptures all throughout his ministry. He seems to know them so well. He even corrects the learned scholars of his day. His teaching style was consistent with the Jewish itinerant teachers of his day. This is no minor factor. Scholars then, as scholars now, study most of their lives to gain the encyclopedic knowledge Jesus had, knowledge of the Hebrew laws and customs. So what are we to believe? That Jesus took the Torah with him to India? That he studied the scriptures in between lessons on transcendental meditation? Get out of here. Jesus didn't travel to India. It's clear. Nor did he survive the cross. These things, they're not opinions, they're not subjective. We can know what actually happened, and we can know what didn't happen. We don't have to speculate about the person of Jesus. We don't have to make things up about what he said and what he did. And we really shouldn't, because that's straight up delusional. Whether you are willing to know and accept these historical facts are a different matter. My name is Christ Defender. I defend the Christian faith. I answer questions and criticisms concerning Christianity. If you like what I do and you would like to support me, hit the Patreon link in the description below. If you're not too sure yet, but you're intrigued, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, check me out. Okay, bye!